I don't.
Re-experience the mind unbounded. Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative...
Good evening, boys and girls. Tonight I'd like to talk about the Amiga 1000. Buying it, potential pitfalls, problems, and, the good aspects of buying an Amiga 1000. Well, the Amiga 1000 was launched by Commodore in 1980. Was it 5 or 6? 1985 it was, July. It is the first Amiga. It is possibly, dare I say this, one of the better built Amigas. It's certainly up there with the Amiga 3000 in terms of build quality. It's incredibly well screwed together. It has fantastic shielding. It has brass or copper bushes holding it together. It's extremely well built. But anyway, the initial machine was an NTSC. It was a 256K RAM machine with a further 256K internal RAM, which was used as a ROM storage, which means when you turn the Amiga on, you get a request for the kickstart disk to be inserted. Pop the disk in and it will then load the disk into RAM, reboot, and ask you for a workbench disk in much the same way an Amiga 500 would. This is the same for the PAL version, but the PAL version motherboard differs in that it has so you can have 64 colours, half bright, and the internal additional RAM wasn't on a daughter board, it was actually built into the motherboard. So it's a revised motherboard on the European PAL versions. So you get the Amiga 1000, you turn it on, you get a nice little jingle, and it displays a insert kickstart disk, pretty much as you can see above me. And you need a kickstart disk before you can even put the workbench disk in to load workbench. Not a problem, really, but it does become a little irksome if you're trying software and flicking between programs. But once you've loaded the ROM in, you can reboot the machine, soft reboot through keyboard, and you don't need to load the ROM in again. Power off and back on again, and then you will need to load the ROM. Again, it's a disk, it's no big deal. It loads reasonably quickly. But anyway, that's the boot sequence of the Amiga 1000. What is it? Well, it is the first Amiga from Commodore. If you buy an American version, there is no Commodore logo on it. If you buy a European one, it says Commodore on it. It has a keyboard garage, which means you can push the keyboard under the machine, the desktop machine, and it pushes away neatly. The keyboard cable, or twirly keyboard cable, is an RJ something, very much like a telephone, or the old style telephone, ask your mum. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. If the keyboard wire is missing from your Amiga 1000, then good luck finding one. They're as rare as hen's teeth. Don't be tempted to buy an Amiga 1000 without a keyboard, because also they are incredibly difficult to find and are very, very expensive. For example, I bought an Amiga 1000 not too many years ago, probably 3-4 years ago. I paid something like £80 for it with a keyboard. I did buy one a year or two before that for £50 without a keyboard, and spent 2 years almost trying to find a keyboard. It's not worth buying one if it doesn't have a keyboard. The reason that many Amigas don't have keyboards is because Commodore offered a trade-in where you could buy the, I don't remember if it was a 2000 or the 500, I think it was the 2000, upgrade to the Amiga 2000, bring in your keyboard as proof that you've bought a 1000, and we'll give you a big cash discount. So lots of people traded in the 1000s, or 1000 keyboard anyway, for a discount on an A2000. So should you buy one? Well, it's without doubt the prettiest Amiga ever made. It comes with all the designers' names and signatures on the inside of the case. You unscrew the case, take it off, and they're all on there, including J Miner's dog, Mitchie. He has a paw print on there. It was initially meant to have 128K with an option to 256K, but it was released as 256K with an upgrade to 512 with a front-loaded RAM module. That's what the square or rectangle cover is on the front of the case. When you look, pop that off and it's a RAM module. Those covers are often broken because people clip them off and the clips break. So if you've got one with a good cover, you are very lucky. It comes with a 68000, just like the Amiga 500 and the 2000 for that matter. It has no internal expansion. It comes with the early revision floppy disk drive, which is a big chunky disk drive. If yours is broken, the only place I know to find one is in the Amiga 1000 external disk drive, which is also a big rectangle chunky thing. I think it's the A1010. That is the same disk drive as the internal 1000 disk drive. It comes with, like I say, 256K or 512K of RAM, which is essentially chip RAM. It can be upgraded, but Amiga 1000 RAM expansions are very difficult to find. You can plug in an Amiga 500 RAM expansion, but beware. The port on Amiga 500, when you look at it for RAM, is this side, so you plug it in. On Amiga 1000, it's on the right hand side. So it's the same orientation, i.e. it's not upside down, it's just on the other side. Do not plug things upside down, you'll destroy them. So you can use Amiga 500 peripherals on a 1000, but just be aware that it's on the other side of the machine and can often obscure the mouse port. The mouse itself is a bespoke mouse for the Amiga 1000. It's got a little right angle. No other Amiga has this. Problems. If you want to use the Amiga 1000 as a modernish Amiga, i.e. you wish to use a nicer workbench and use WHD load, then you're probably out of luck, simply because expanding the Amiga 1000 chip RAM to 2 megabyte chip is extremely difficult. You cannot pop in a mega chip because it is a completely different package for the microchip. It won't fit. The best I ever got, I don't think I ever got above 512 chip, to be honest. You can put fast RAM into it, and I did. I had fast RAM in mine, and it was Amiga 500 RAM, I think. You can even plug an Amiga 500 hard drive in, SCSI hard drive into the side, but again, it's on the other side of the machine, so you'll be looking at the rear ports of the disk drive looking at you rather than the pretty shaped front. If you try pushing the Zorro port to the extremes of an Amiga 500 port, you will have issues. It won't like it. So what are the good sides from having a 1000? Well, you will have the prettiest Amiga ever made. If you get one that's in white and in nice condition, you also have colour composite out. You have a slightly faster Amiga 500 in a pretty case. What do I mean? Well, you run sysinfo on an Amiga 1000, then run sysinfo on an Amiga 500. The 1000 runs faster. Not by much, but by a little bit. It's particularly noticeable if you play Defender of the Crown. The music will stop and play quite slowly on a PAL machine on an A500. The A1000 it plays just a little bit quicker. Not much, but just a little bit. So should you buy one? Yes. As a collectible, from an historic point of view, yes. Should you buy one to use? Well, only if you wish to use discs, floppy disks, or a floppy disk emulator. You could have you could have what they call a GoTech or a floppy emulator in place of the disk drive if you wish. The keyboard's an RJ10. Just come to me. It has all the usual ports on the back of it, just like a normal Amiga 500. In fact, all the ports of the Amiga stayed the same all the way through its life, except for one. There was one difference on Amiga 1000. I think it's the parallel port. It could be the serial, but I think the parallel port is wide, slightly different for some reason. So check that out before you go plugging things in. There's not much to say about the Amiga 1000. Basically consider it to be a very early, you could argue it's a beta machine. It wasn't really ready for release when Commodore released it. Commodore released it because they were run out of money in 1985, which is very difficult to believe, but it's true. So they released it with a dodgy operating system, which came back to kick them in the nuts because it gained a reputation for being unreliable, which is unfair because the Amiga 1000 was super solid when it had Workbench 1.3. It was just 1.1 and version 1 were a little bit flaky. 1.2 was okay. Can you accelerate it? Yes, you can. You can plug into it Amiga 2000 and Amiga 500 CPU accelerators if they fit. Now the 1000, the motherboard, has a big cutout in it for the disk drive internal, and it's a big long disk drive, and the CPU socket is next to that. So if you've got a big accelerator card, as most of them were in these days, it will foul on the disk drive, so it won't fit. In fact, this is an issue with many things. Quirks. It came with Microsoft Amiga Basic, as did the earliest Amiga 500s, which is a dreadful version of Basic, pretty unique. It was dropped on version 1. It's dropped on version 2, so I think 1.3 had it as well. Like I say, it makes a startup tone when you turn the machine on. There's a little doodle type noise, a little jingle. The Zorro port is on the wrong side of the machine, compared to a 500 anyway. No internal expansion, colour composite, and its own peculiar RJ10 phone lead for the keyboard. Initially, J Miner wanted it to have a modem built in, but I think Commodore killed this pretty early on its development cycle, which is a shame. I always thought the Amiga should have had communications at its heart, but it didn't. So should you buy one? Yes, as a collectible. As a usable? Not so much. You're better off with a 500, to be honest. And even then, you're probably better off with a 600 or 12. But that's another story. So that's my look at the Amiga 1000. I shall put some pictures on, and I'll put some pictures on, probably the startup jingle, perhaps an advert for it if I can find them. I'm going to go through the whole Amiga range and go through some pros and cons of each machine. But that's it. There's not much to say about the Amiga 1000. The Amiga 500 had a much longer development cycle. the Amiga 1000 appeared and was killed off relatively quickly. I think it was killed off in 1987 as the 500 was introduced, so it was only about for 2 years. It's a pretty short cycle for an Amiga. Only the 600 beats it, but nobody likes the 600. Anyway, that's it from me. I hope you found this little talk interesting. You probably didn't, but that's okay. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.